Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Dennehy. I want to welcome everyone here tonight to our wonderful Council on Aging. Before we get started, I'd like to make note of some of our elected officials here. I see Jack O'Brien from Senator Timlity's office in the back. I know the senator will be joining us shortly. I see members of my Select Board Member Conlon and Select Board Member Collins. Thank you for coming tonight. I also see in attendance Rep. Cullinane, Rep. Dan Cullinane, and Rep. Bill Driscoll, who are here. And before I pass it off to Rick Colon from Mass Department of Transportation and the team from the MBTA to give their presentation, I'd ask if Rep. Cullinane and Rep. Driscoll would add a couple of comments.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Come on up. We're guests in your district, so you're taking it. You want to take it easy?
Thank you all for being here tonight. It's exciting. I've seen the presentation once before, so we're very grateful to Rep. Cullinane, former Senator Dorsina Forey. We're part of the team that got the money to make a lot of this happen. And in particular, my district, I share Milton with Dan up at the State House in the House of Reps, and then with Senator Timlity in the Senate. The Milton stop, we hear a lot about the staircase that needs to be fixed, some of the other improvements we'll see in this in terms of overall investment that the MBTA is looking at. And then, there's been the conversation around the life of the vehicle in the future, and Dan, you've got a lot of thoughts on that. So thank you for all your work, and I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, appreciate it. Bill's doing a heck of a job up at the State House, and he's been an unbelievable partner in government and deserves so much credit for all the work that he's doing for Milton and Randolph. And just to be brief, I'll just say this is an exciting time. This is good news. When we're looking at the scale of investment that we're going to be seeing in these stations along this line and in the vehicles that serve this line, first and foremost, this is an issue of transit equity. If you look at the time it takes someone to get from the station in Mattapan into downtown Boston, it averages an hour or more, you'd say, but that data comes down because of the trolley. The 6,000 people that have access to this trolley daily has a direct connection to the red line. This trolley is a lifeline to bringing those numbers down. And so in 2015, late 2015, early 2016, there started to be rumblings about the future of the line, whether there would be a future of the line, what type of vehicles would serve the community along that line. And my predecessor, way back when, the last time there was a fight on this was Maureen Feeney back in the day. And so this line is so important to each station along the community. We jumped in. We authored a letter to the Fiscal Management Control Board and the MBTA, signed on by the whole delegation. Others chimed in as well to say that we wanted this line invested in. We wanted the Fiscal Management Control Board to make a decision to invest in the line, to invest in the vehicles as they are now, and to ultimately, as this community conversation happens, to make sure not just that we get the investment that the communities along the line deserve, but that we have this full dialogue about what that would mean in a full future of the line with trolleys as the service vehicle. Because everyone, loud and clear, time and time again, has said that they want to see this historic trolley line preserved, but they want trolleys as the vehicles that serve them. We see places all around the country that have previously paved over trolley lines like this, that are going back to trolleys as the vehicle. And so what was important was we were able to secure funding, a total of $7.9 million that's being invested into the current trolley fleet as we speak. That's going to put these trolley cars on the path to last 7 to 10 more years, so that the other pieces of the infrastructure investments that can happen that the MBTA is going to get into in a little bit. And so with that 7.9, we're going to see new painted trolley cars, the new propulsion systems. It's going to get us during this time when we want to see that investment happen. In addition, there was an MBTA commissioned report, $1 million study to go in and really explore every possible option, so that when we have this dialogue, we know what it costs, what vehicle options exist, and then as a community, we can make the best possible decision together. And so I remember when parts of this report came out, I was on the phone with General Manager Poftak before he even started on the job, and talked about what was actually in the redacted report that came out New Year's Eve. And at that time, I asked him, and he stayed true to his word, and his team has been exceptional, to make sure that we have just as many community meetings about all of the possible options that exist on the study, just like we did when we unveiled the $7.9 million that was gonna go into the line. So I think what you're gonna see here tonight are some exciting options of what the future of this line is gonna look like. They're gonna walk through all of the options, the pros and cons of each, and then take all your questions so that we can make sure every community on the line has the opportunity to weigh in. We did our first meeting in Mattapan the other night. We have another meeting on Thursday in Lower Mills. And I just wanna give a special shout out to the select board and Milton, Katie, Melinda, the whole team, and Richard Wells and everyone for making sure that it was the town as well with Town Administrator Dennehy. Everyone has been in the same boat, rowing in the same direction to make sure that this investment in this important transit link for our community happens. And so I think this is an exciting time. We can think together on what the best possible option is, but I want to thank the MBTA and everyone that's been involved over the last several years to getting us to this point, from wondering whether the future of this line was uncertain, to seeing this type of level of commitment, to funding the future of the Mattapan high-speed line, and seeing the level of dollars that are coming back into the communities that this line serves. So thank you everyone that's been involved with the Facebook group. Thank you to over 2,000 people that have signed the petition to save the line. This is an exciting time, and I'm going to kick it back over to Mike, and thank you for all your work on it as well.
Thank you, Rep. Cullinane. Thank you, both Rep. Cullinane and Rep. Driscoll for their words. Select Board Member Zulus and myself were also in attendance at the Transportation Building about a month ago, and I echo both representatives' sentiments. I think you'll be impressed with the work that's been done to get to this point, and I also appreciate the work that's been done by Rick Colon from Mass DOT, and I'll turn it over to the MBTA group, and I think you'll be impressed with what they have to offer tonight. So without further ado, it's Eric and Amanda from MBTA.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Representatives. Can everybody hear me okay, or should I use the microphone? Good? Okay.
You could use the microphone for broadcasting.
Very good. So can everybody hear me through the, out in the audience? Okay. So I'm going to walk through some of the work that we've been performing, and so to kick that all off, I want to thank you for hosting us this evening to walk you through the transformation early stages and evaluation of the Mattapan alternatives that we work through with our consultants, Jacobs Engineering. My name is Eric Studhoff. I'm the chief engineer for the MBTA, and I'm here to present to you, but also to listen to you and gather your feedback from some of the words and some of the slides that I'll be showing you this evening. So I'm going to go through this and try and explain in as much detail as you all would like through my presentation and through your questions. So without any more, let's move along. So just as a little bit of Mattapan 101, the trolley service is 2.6 miles long from Dorchester and from Milton and Dorchester to Ashmont. It connects the Red Line. It carries just about 6,600 passengers per day. It's approximately a 6-mile trip, and trains run about 6 minutes during the peak rush hour. Go ahead. So as we were crafting the presentation and thinking internally within the MBTA about what the transformation of the Mattapan line would constitute, we started thinking about what are the first principles or the more than goals, but really what is going to be our guiding light to the work that we're going to put into making the Mattapan trolley line exist for the foreseeable future. And those are laid out here. Obviously, first and foremost is prioritizing safety, but right behind that and really neck and neck is accessibility. The work that we want to do to improve the Mattapan trolley service is to make sure that it's accessible by anybody and everybody who wants to ride this service. Improve the level of service. Not only is it going to be accessible and safe, but we want to make it more accessible, and we want to make it provide better service into the downtown core, like the representative kicked off the conversation just this evening on. We want to make sure that the work that we do to transform the service has the least impact possible. Obviously, there's going to be some impacts to the service as we go through and we make the kind of investment that we're going to be talking about into the service. But we want to do it in as thoughtful way as possible to minimize the amount of disruption that it will have to those of you who use this line to commute in and out of Boston every day. And then we want to incorporate all of your feedback. We want to engage the community in the decision making that we're making for how we're going to go about making some of these stations accessible and the improvements that we're going to make to the line, and hear your feedback and engage with the community as we go through this process. And then we are setting ourselves up with an initial investment, what we're calling the phase one investment in the Mattapan transformation, into the existing PCC trolleys to get us that 10-year window where we will be doing the engineering work and the due diligence and the planning for enacting a lot of this investment in the Mattapan trolley line. Go ahead. So breaking down the program into really three different phases. And the first one is what I just mentioned, which is just shy of $8 million of investment into rehabilitating the PCC, or the existing trolleys that run on the line right now, through different investments, primarily along the propulsion system, but also bodywork, new coat of paint, LED lighting, and other upgrades to the PCC trolleys so that they can continue to perform over the next 10 years, thereabouts. Phase two is what we're calling, and phase 2 and 3 will overlap, but phase 2 is what we're calling the modernization work that is agnostic to the type of vehicle that we use. Whether it's a bus, whether it's a PCC, whether it's another type of trolley, all of these things need to happen. We need to upgrade the power network that propels the vehicles. We need to make accessibility investments and access investments into the stations. We need to make upgrades to the bridges that carry the service over the rivers and roadways. So these are independent of the type of vehicle that we're going to make. And then the phase 3 piece of the modernization program is the set of investments that we need to make into the corridor and into the service that we provide that is dependent on the vehicle type. That is the vehicle itself. That is the maintenance facility that will house and give our workforce the ability to maintain those vehicles for the foreseeable future. And then some other discrete investments into signal systems, power overhead catenary systems, or roadway systems, depending on the different types of vehicles that we've considered. So I say this, and I say it in this broad way to give a ground and a base plan for understanding the work that the team and we at the MBTA performed in our evaluation of all the different alternatives. Because honestly, as we were going through our different alternatives, we were fairly surprised with the outcome that we saw from evaluating all of the project components and modernization components that this line will go through over the next several years, depending on the type of vehicle that we were going to use. Let's go on to the next. So phase 1 is the improvements to the existing PCC trolleys. As you can see by the photos, we have a great need that we need to put into these vehicles. The biggest piece that we are putting into this is in the rolling stock portions of it. These are the trucks. These are the wheels and the gears and the motors that actually drive those vehicles. Those are some of the components that are in the most need of investment. But the rest of the vehicle itself also will be invested in. And like was mentioned before, and I'm mentioning again, it's just shy of $8 million investment, or just about $1 million per vehicle that we're investing in keeping these PCC trolleys operating for the next 10 years or so. Go ahead. So in addition to the investment in the vehicles, what we also performed was a condition evaluation of the existing line in itself. So looking at all the bridges, looking at the tracks, looking at the power systems, and really evaluating the stations and all of the infrastructure that serves the Mattapan trolley line. And that is a lot of the due diligence work that has given us the ability to evaluate our different alternatives that we will be weighing against and really building the modernization of the Mattapan trolley line to serve. We also came out and had several public meetings several years ago to get initial feedback, and we're out today to continue to gather more feedback from the community. We had a meeting last week, and we have another meeting on Thursday, and we'll continue to take feedback. Officially, we're taking feedback for about a month after the last meeting on Thursday, but certainly, we're a public agency and we serve this riding public, and so if there's additional comments that come about, always happy to take additional feedback from the community when it comes to what the services that we're going to provide. Go ahead. So what came out of that evaluation was the condition of our infrastructure. We really need to make investments in several aspects of our infrastructure because there is just a deferred maintenance that has plagued the whole MBTA, but the Mattapan Trolley as well. The power infrastructure is in desperate need of upgrade. You may recall that the service was shut down for about 2 weeks last winter or last spring timeframe when we had some significant power infrastructure difficulties. That's where we had to make some upgrades to the return of the power infrastructure so that we can continue to provide level or even delivery of electricity to the trolley line, and so we did have to make some pretty significant maintenance investment last year. But it's more than that what's necessary. We really need to really double the capacity of the power grid to run train service in the near future, and that changes even more dramatically if we look at some of the other vehicle alternatives that we looked at. Upgrades to the bridges. The condition of the bridges, they're all over 60 or 70 years old. They have some needs that we need to invest into the structural capacity of those bridges. They're all safe for service, but when we consider some of the other vehicle alternatives, we do need to increase the carrying capacity of those bridges. Signal systems. So we did recently have a trolley-on-trolley accident. This goes back about 9 months or so. The line is not signalized. It is all radio-based communication between the trolley operators and the station officials. So as part of the modernization program, we will be installing a signal system that will allow the trains to communicate with one another automatically, as well as communicate with some of the traffic signals at a few of the grade crossings that we have, both in the town of Milton and in the city of Boston. And then is the stations themselves. The stations are non-accessible. We need to make some significant investment in both the condition, state of good repair of those stations, as well as the accessibility to those stations. Go ahead. So, here are the 6 different vehicle alternatives that we performed a deep evaluation for the vehicle costs and the infrastructure costs for all of the different alternatives so that we could make a real comparative analysis of our options in front of us so that we can really have the best plan with our eyes wide open going into the modernization of the Mattapan line. Going down the list, the first option is continuing to try and rehabilitate the PCC fleet or even further modify the PCC fleet. The real downside to this option is the accessibility. These vehicles are non-accessible and there really is no way to make them accessible. Option 2 is to procure a new replica type of heritage vehicle. The benefit to this is we can make them accessible. The drawback is they're not fully accessible. They do have an onboard lift as opposed to having any kind of level boarding at the stations. And they're also not really historic. They just have sort of a historic feel to them, kind of like a New Orleans style vehicle. Option 3 is to repurpose one of the light rail vehicles that we are currently purchasing right now, which is, we call it the Type 9. It's the newest generation of the Green Line. It's Type 7 is the existing high floor vehicle that we operate on the Green Line. Type 8 is the vehicle that has 70% low floor, and Type 9 is really just an upgraded version of the Type 8 that has been purchased as part of the Green Line extension project and is a 70% low floor vehicle. Option 4 is a new modern LRV or light rail vehicle. This would be similar to a streetcar type vehicle that you would see elsewhere in the United States or in Europe. Option 5 is a 60-foot articulated diesel hybrid electric vehicle. This would be like any old bus that we operate on the city streets of Boston, or that might be similar to something that you'd see the Silver Line operating. And then option 6 is very similar to option 5. The difference being it's an all-electric variant of the 60-foot articulated bus operation. Next slide. So the next few slides I'm going to roll through are really the benefits and the drawbacks to the different alternatives from a vehicle perspective, and then we'll talk about some of the other infrastructure pieces as we roll through these slides as well. So the first one is the PCC, and I led with that in the early stages because if you recall back when I talked about the first principles of the Mattapan trolley line, first principles, the number 2 on that list is accessibility. We heard the community loud and clear 2 years ago that there's great love for the PCC vehicles and the nostalgia of these vehicles. They are going on their 70th birthday, but they are not accessible. And with the infrastructure build that these vehicles are, it is near impossible to make these vehicles accessible for all of our ridership. So this is a major drawback for us when it comes to reusing these vehicles as a permanent alternative for providing service along the Mattapan trolley line. Go ahead. Option 2 is to procure a heritage, what we're calling a heritage or a replica PCC vehicle. There really doesn't exist one other than what you might see down in the New Orleans area with what they have built out for their heritage. In fact, this is an image of one of those types of vehicles. It can really look like anything, but the backbone or the framework of what this vehicle is built on is still a high floor, meaning your seating and your floor of your vehicle is somewhere around 4 feet above the ground level. So you still need to get up to that location. And so if you can, I wish I had a pointer, but I'm going to walk up to the screen. Right there where I just pointed. So where I just pointed on the screen, you'll see that little blue speck is a lift push button where somebody who needs a lift to be deployed to allow for access, whether using a walker or a wheelchair or a stroller or any other difficulty in navigating stairs, would need to depress that plunger to call for a lift to deploy for access. So marginally accessible, but also a bespoke type of vehicle that we would need to maintain a unique set of maintenance characteristics for operating on the system. Next slide. Option 3, repurposing the Type 9 vehicle or the newest Green Line vehicle. These are purchased right now. We actually only have 4 on property right now. 2 of those are in service. The other 2 are being commissioned. We're purchasing a total of 24 as part of the Green Line extension. These are a 70% low floor vehicle, which means when this train pulls up, the doors will open and anyone will be able to walk on with essentially level boarding, where the gap between the platform in a horizontal position would be no more than, I believe it's 2 inches, and in a vertical condition, no more than 1/2 inch. So pretty well level boarding like you would expect to see on any of our other services. It'll provide additional capacity, nearly twice as much capacity will be provided with one of these vehicles as what's offered with the current fleet of PCC vehicles, each vehicle themselves, and built by an established manufacturer and consistent with the maintenance activities that we'd be performing throughout the light rail system on the Green Line. Obviously, the concern with this one and the drawback with this one is it is contingent on other investments into Green Line vehicles, which we fully intend to engage in for replacing the remainder of the Green Line fleet going forward in the operating future of the MBTA. Go ahead. Option 4 is to procure a unique light rail vehicle for the Mattapan line. This has the benefit of potentially being a 100% low floor vehicle, and certainly provides a great safe option for serving this line. However, drawback is it's an unknown commodity to the MBTA right now, and it would be a unique vehicle that we would need to maintain for just the Mattapan trolley line. Next slide. Option 5 is the diesel-electric hybrid bus alternative. This is one where it has some of the most dramatic impact to both service timing and costs from an infrastructure point of view. The tracks would need to be completely removed. We would need to build roadways to be able to support the bus alternatives. We would also have to make some pretty major investments in the bridges that cross over the rivers and roadways because of some of the horizontal width considerations that we have, as well as possibly impacting some of the abutting neighbors along the corridor to be able to build a right-of-way wide enough for those two buses to operate adjacent to one another, just because of the operating reality of needing bus lanes and sort of the sway and travel of buses passing one another in opposite directions. It's really no different than operating a bus on a dedicated or on a mixed-use environment like a roadway, only here it would be a dedicated right-of-way for bus operations. The concerns are obviously, we have also heard you that this is not an alternative that the community is very happy with or is really supportive of. We understand that, but in order to do our full due diligence and really understand the full breadth of what we were endeavoring with the modernization of the Mattapan line, we did need to fully evaluate this alternative. And I think you'll see in a couple of slides that we're pretty surprised with some of the results that came out of the study. Next slide. Really, the same pros and one other major drawback to this alternative, the battery electric fleet option is, really two major drawbacks. One, there isn't a proven technology for the buses. We are testing our first of a fleet of 5 battery electric buses come this spring, and the technology is advancing, and we fully expect battery electric buses to be the future. And we are excited for that future, but it is still as yet an unproven technology that we would be banking on for this operation. And the second of which is the level of investment in the power grid to be able to charge these buses in this area. It far and exceeds some of the improvements we need to make to the power grid for any of the trolley options. Next slide. So in evaluating the 6 alternatives against our first principles, we came through with this matrix where really the 2 center alternatives are what was able to provide us with the ability to provide an accessible service, a safe service, minimizing the impact to the ridership and to the community, and meeting the needs of the community or the desires of the community for continuing trolley service along the corridor. And that's reuse of the Type 9 vehicle as well as a new light rail vehicle alternative. Next slide. And then as we compare the implementation costs, now these are just capital, so this is just the startup costs, not the long-term maintenance costs. We evaluated the costs for all the different alternatives. PCC option 1 is just shy of a $200 million investment. Replica PCCs is just shy of $250 million of investment. Type 9 is, again, just shy of $200 million of investment. The new LRV is $260 million. The hybrid bus alternative is $215 million, as well as the battery electric bus. Across the middle area here, you'll see that no matter what, in order to make some of the investments in the infrastructure, we're going to spend between $90 and $115 million to upgrade the accessibility of our stations, the safety condition of our stations and of our power grid and of our bridges. Going down into the weeds in the middle here, Phase 3 vehicle, that's the line that highlights how much we would be spending on the different vehicle types as we march from left to right. And again, remember, this is just startup costs. So the PCC, the $5 million to the PCC maybe seems on the light side, but that would be continued on really forever. Then we've got the replica PCCs, the new LRVs. These costs are really driven by the low order number of vehicles, meaning we would purchase only 8 to 10 vehicles of this type, which means that on a per capita basis, we would be spending quite a bit of money to buy each individual vehicle. And then the phase 3 infrastructure, these are the investments that we would make on the infrastructure based around what the conditions of that vehicle would require. For example, there's significant investment for the Type 9 vehicle because of the weight of the vehicle being so much heavier than the current PCC. So there would be some significant infrastructure investment into the tracks and into the bridges to be able to sustain the additional load of those vehicles. And then looking really at the bus alternatives and evaluating what the level of construction would be for the roadway was quite eye-opening for us as we evaluated the alternatives. Next slide. So the next steps that we are endeavoring as at the MBTA is planning for the future modernization of the Mattapan line. That includes putting into our capital investment plan the initial steps for making these modernization improvements. That's the CIP, or capital investment plan. The capital investment plan becomes effective on July 1st. In that, we have the first $60 million programmed. We fully expect that to be funded. And then we've got the public meetings, the one we had last week in Mattapan, and tonight's meeting, and then Thursday's meeting. I know I rushed through that quickly, but I wanted to give as much time as possible for feedback and questions from the audience. Oh, and any questions and comments that you think of? I mean, if you're like me, you're best at these things 5 minutes after it's over. If you've got any of those questions, please shoot emails over to trolley@mbta.com, and we'll be sure to incorporate them into the public feedback.
Eric, I'd also like to point out that we are recording by way of pen and paper the questions and the comments that come from this meeting tonight. Alternatively, we have forms at the table that you can fill out on your way out, and let us know your thoughts on tonight's presentation and what you'd like to see going down the road. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions.
Sounds great. Yes, sir.
If you migrate to one of the other things, can you keep the PCC cars running and then cannibalize them and keep one, as you phase them out, keep them going?
So I should have mentioned that. So we absolutely plan on keeping the PCC vehicles as a we run a heritage day kind of thing, or keep them for other historic implementations. It's just the operating of the day-to-day service that we want to move away from. Yes, sir.
So would they be operating on the Mattapan line still, or once you do the operation, once you do the heritage day thing, would you be using the PCs on the main green line or on the Mattapan line, or both?
Can you ask people just to use that microphone?
Oh, sure. So I've been asked if you want to ask a question to please speak into this microphone. Are we going to be able to kind of?
That's on.
I'll do it, no problem.
So, like the other gentleman's question behind me just said, so as for the heritage fleet, will the current PCCs would it just be the heritage fleet for the Mattapan line, or will it be able to transfer some to the green line as well?
I think that's an open question. Right now, it would most likely be just for the Mattapan line, but that's me thinking out loud right now, honestly.
Oh, no problem.
But I think anything's open when it comes to acknowledging the heritage of the PCC vehicles. It's really just the continual service using an accessible vehicle that we're trying to get to.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree with that. So that's all.
Thank you.
I got it.
Thanks, Rick.
So for anybody else wishing to voice a comment or ask a question, please come to the front of the room so you can speak into the mic for the benefit of the people watching this on cable access.
can you just say a little bit more about the environmental issues that you're concerned about or working with or around or something?
Sure, certainly. So with particularly with the roadway alternatives for bus operations, clearly there would need to be additional drainage that we would need to build as part of the roadways, and collecting the different snow melt and other concerns with just how we're going to collect all of that runoff that today infiltrates into the ground. We would need a different connection for that kind of environmental runoff. One thing I neglected to mention, but I should mention, is these vehicles, no matter which alternative we choose, will be much better at operating during snowstorms. Today, we shut down operation of the Mattapan line when there's 4 inches of snow on the tracks, and that's mostly because of the inability of those vehicles to continue to operate, either ingesting the snow or through traction issues. So we will be considering, everybody should rest assured that the vehicles will be constructed in a way to provide service when we do have deeper snow totals than what we shut down for today.
Can I just follow up 1 second? Are you working within the Ponset River Watershed Commission on this?
So certainly we will be working with all the different abutting communities as we go through this process to make sure that we're not creating any harm to the environment as we go through the modernization program.
Thank you.
Next question.
First of all, I want to congratulate a great presentation. I
Thank
think
you.
it was very thorough. And my comment is my wife takes the trolley every day, ends up reading 50 books a year on the trolley, so don't speed it up too much. But what I really want to say is my dad worked for the MBTA, immigrant from County Kerry, Ireland, and as a reward later in his career he rode the Mattapan trolley for 10 odd years. So great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you to the service of your father.
Any other questions or comments? Please come forward.
Thank you. In doing your due diligence, was the option ever looked at of extending the Red Line train to Mattapan Square and doing away with the extension completely?
No, we did not. We recognize that the extension of the Red Line heavy rail operation that we have terminating at Ashmont would be very disruptive to the community, much more so than what we were planning for right now. First of all, it would be completely grade separated, meaning we could not have a grade crossing at a couple of the street intersections that we have today. The right-of-way that would be necessary would be much greater than the right-of-way that the Mattapan high-speed line operates on right now. So it could impact abutting homes and properties. So no, we did not evaluate extending the Red Line as an operation. The yard at Ashmont is also very critical to the operation of the heavy rail that would really then need to be considered, and the track alignment would take even more property to have a midpoint train yard for where we would lay up and store vehicles during the midday. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Javon Lassette. You guys stated there's an equity piece to this. The question that the gentleman asked is a major equity piece. Long time ago, if folks who know the history of this railroad, it was supposed to go not only to Mattapan Square, but to Hyde Park. It's beautiful having this trolley, but that trolley, and most of the folks may not speak about it, but the folks in Mattapan and Hyde Park who ride it the most, coming from that end, that's a classic. That's like a classic car. Your classic car, you know what you do? That's like your second or your third or your fourth car. And what you normally do, you put that aside, and then when the temperature's right, you drive it. What I'm trying to say, I say that to say, we don't want to wait 8 to 9 years to get that what you call it, that real nine.
The type 9.
That type 9. We don't. We want it now. You're spending all this money. That's what's been happening. Y'all been putting band-aids on this trolley forever. I catch it. Both my daughters, we live in Willow Mills. They catch it every day. Come from Mattapan Square. of coming from school. We catch that rail. It's beautiful, but at the same time, during the winter time, I gotta go pick them up from the station or go pick them up from school because when it's snowing, it's not gonna work. And then let's talk about the Asian community that we have. We have a true Asian community that cannot even use that rail because it's not handicap accessible. I appreciate, the classic of it. I live in Lower Mills, but I don't see the street. So I like the noise of it going by. I'm used to it. But at the same time, we need a new rail now. We need the Type 9 now. And I know the folks, maybe some folks in here not talking about it, but a lot of other folks, I'm sure they brought this up to you already.
So certainly can appreciate where you're coming from. That's exactly what's driving us to make sure that we choose an accessible alternative to provide this service. The reality is that we do need to go through a robust planning and engineering process, but we will be moving as quickly as we can to implement the service.
Next question.
Are any of these bus concerns noise? Because the Silver Line came through South Boston when I lived there, and it was horrible, the noise from the buses. So is that what you're considering when you're talking about the buses coming through, electric buses?
So we did not consider noise as one of the different alternatives. I don't know, Amanda, help me out here. Are the buses or the trolleys significantly different in terms of noise output?
So this wasn't something that we evaluated from an engineering standpoint, just because that requires a very in-depth study and it requires the vehicles to be in place and testable. But my understanding would be that especially the electric bus option would be far less noisier than, say, a diesel bus option or a conventional engined vehicle. Same as kind of a Prius or a Tesla versus a regular car. It's much quieter in general. That's kind of the level at which we looked at this.
So honestly, I don't see us going down an alternative where we would replace the trolley service with a bus alternative. Should we get to that point, I'm sure we could perform a noise analysis to compare the current state with what the future state would look like. Yes, sir.
I just want to add one piece on the sound issue in having the opportunity with some of my colleagues to be able to tour the Type 9 vehicle is that it is significantly quieter than the current trolley and would be significantly quieter than any bus option. And one piece in particular for those that live closer to Ashmont, or anyone that's taken the trolley, that big loop where you hear a lot of the grinding of the old equipment against the track, that loop would probably be eliminated and be able, with these vehicles, to be able to kind of pull in. You can drive from both sides. And so a lot of the screeching that we hear, depending which way the wind's blowing, that some folks here might hear, that would be eliminated with the newer trolley vehicles.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. That's absolutely an option that we have for us with the Type 9 trolley operation. With it being a double-ended, or you can drive it from either end of the vehicle, we could provide a pull-in and pull-out alternative for operating out of Ashmont.
Hi, two questions. Are these slides up on MBTA.com so we can review them at a little more leisure?
So they certainly will be. I do not believe that they're up yet. We were going to post them after the third meeting on Thursday.
Okay. And then could you also talk a little bit about the staircase at the Milton station that has been closed for months now?
Certainly. So the staircase at Milton is closed because of a safety concern. There is an alternative path of travel that is available to access the station from. It is something that we are concerned with. But it's also part of the accessibility upgrades that station needs to have made to it. Stairs are particularly difficult when it comes to the level of deterioration that we've seen with those stairs, where really they need to be closed until we can make the station fully accessible.
Is there a timeline?
So that's part of the initial phase when we receive the additional funding on July, that we're going to start the engineering process for right away, which is the station access piece for upgrading those stations.
I think one thing, I was at the last meeting, and I think the timeline was mentioned of maybe being like 2 to 3 years for fixing those stairs.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm wondering, you also talked
So when the difficulty there is that there is an alternative path of travel to access the station, and with the station not being fully accessible, in order to reconstitute those stairs, we would need to make that station access point fully accessible, which means we need another path of travel, what we call concurrent or within very close proximity to those stairs, to be constructed at the same time. And so that's the challenge to solve that at the same time we solve the stairs. So I know it's a difficult answer to hear, but that is the challenge that we have when it comes to some of these stairs at these inaccessible stations.
I would just voice that it's fine for someone like me to walk extra far. I don't mind doing it, but I know there are a lot of people in the community who walking that extra very far distance is hindrance.
I completely understand and completely, sympathize.
Okay, we've got some people wanting to ask questions here.
Good evening. My name is Richard Wells. I'm Chair of the Select Board here, and I want to thank you all for coming out and doing this. I also want to thank our reps, Representative Dan Colonnane, Representative Driscoll, and Senator Timilty for their work on the state side supporting the community. I understand that, and I heard the comments about wanting the LRV right now, but am I correct in that in the 8 years going, if you redo the PCCs and continue the PCC operation, that would allow you to continue operation and start to do some of the infrastructure improvements looking out towards the future?
That's right.
Okay. Because I understand you can't run them together and you can't run one or the other.
Correct. We would need to, we'd need to pick a date in the future where on one Friday night, say, the PCC stopped operating, and on that Saturday morning,
the
LRVs would start.
Okay.
That is the way we would need to operate. But there's a series of steps that we need to put in place before that can happen.
Okay. Thank you again. A little bit of history. My dad came on the Milton Police Department in 1950. He and four of his brothers from Dorchester all served in World War II together. When they got out, they never owned a home. They pooled their war bonds and bought their parents a house up on Beacon Street, which is on the High Park line. So for him to come to work, this is how important that trolley line has been for so many people. He would walk down Truman Highway, take a bus in uniform to Mattapan Station, and take the trolley to Central Station where the Milton Police headquarters were in those days. 10 cops on the shift, 9 of them took the trolley. So that's how long it's been around. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate your transparency with this. I have a question and a comment. My comment is I take the first train in the morning. I'm a nurse at MGH. My shift starts at 6, and I will tell you every seat is full. It's a community in the morning. We see the same faces, and this is just like a very important thing to all of us. The second thing, the question I have is, can you explain the difference between the Type 9 and the regular Green Line? Why can't we just supplement with the regular Green Line trains?
So the Green Line is comprised, currently today, the Green Line is comprised of two types of vehicles. The Type 7, which is the high floor vehicle that no matter where you ride it, you need to climb steps to get up to the riding level. And then the Type 8, that's the trolley that has the midpoint low level area within the train consist. We are currently purchasing, or we've purchased, but we're taking delivery of 24 Type 9 vehicles. At the time that the 10-year window is up, or the 8-year window is up, almost all of the existing types, all of the Type 7s, and most of the Type 8 vehicles will be what we call beyond its useful life. It'll be right around the 30th birthday for those vehicles, whereas the Type 9s will just be around, 8 to 10 years old. And so those vehicles have a 35-year lifespan to them, and they will be really the vehicles that we would want to incorporate into this operation. Currently today, we don't have enough vehicles to redeploy some of the Green Line out to the Mattapan line. We don't have enough vehicles to provide the service across the entire system, and that's why we're investing in the PCC vehicles to keep this operation going while we're able to make some of the infrastructure upgrades that can then also be compatible with a new vehicle fleet.
Okay. I've heard rumors that the Green Line can't make that first turn. Those vehicles are unable to make that turn. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
So I'm not aware of the Green Line vehicles not being able to navigate any of those curves. I believe all of the curves on the Mattapan line are what we would call, wider or less sharp than some of our most restrictive curves on the Green Line, particularly on the Park Street Loop is one of our classic locations where downtown the screeching is pretty bad. That tight loop is tighter than the Ashmont Loop is.
Okay.
But
Great,
certainly any concerns about that will be fully vetted as part of this engineering piece that we have to go through over the next several years. And any of those kinds of issues will be solved as part of the modernization program to make sure that we don't have a whoopsie.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Katie Conlon. I'm a member of the Select Board, and I wanted to thank you also for coming here tonight and for this great presentation. I had two questions. 3 years ago, the Select Board weighed in with a comment letter on the project, and we were very concerned at the time about environmental issues, so we were really not in favor of buses, so I'm really happy to hear you say tonight that you've heard the community loud and clear on that. Related to, the other concern was that we also heard from a number of people who really liked the appearance and the historic character of the existing cars. So my two questions are, if you were to consider the new light rail vehicle, the modern light rail vehicle option, is there a way that it possibly can be designed so that it has some historic character or appearance that is a little different than what's shown in the picture, but if you have 8 or 10 years, there's a way that maybe you could combine some of the historic niceties of the existing cars, or maybe the New Orleans vehicle that you showed with the modern technology of the new light rail vehicle, if it's possible. I think it would be worth exploring. And secondly, could you speak a little more about the signalization at the Central Avenue stop? As you probably know, we're going to have, starting construction hopefully very soon, a new mixed-use commercial and residential development at the Henry site. And that will bring more activity, more pedestrians, more foot traffic into the area. There's already, with the bike path, with the stores in the area, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic currently. And sometimes there are near misses with cars crossing over that intersection and not waiting to check and see if the trolley's coming. So could you just speak a little more about signalization and whether there might be anything in addition to signalization at Central that the MBTA might be considering? Thanks very much.
So to address your first point, I'm wearing an orange tie for a reason this evening. We understand that the high-speed line has a brand all of its own, and we fully anticipate embracing that with the repurposing of the Type 9 vehicle or with the new light rail vehicle. How exactly we'll accomplish that, I think we can absolutely have a public discussion on how to go about doing that in the best and most respectful way possible. To the signalization issue, we've gotten great feedback from the community at the last meeting, and honestly, we internally really want to partner with the town of Milton and with the city of Boston for how to manage those grade crossings going forward through signalization of those intersections and how to go about making sure that they are providing, again, number one on our first principles is safety, providing safe service, not just for the trains, but for the pedestrians and for the bicyclists and for the electric scooters when they come and for the automobiles and really everybody else that is going to be crossing at these locations. So very much an open discussion that we need to start having with both the town and the city of Boston for managing those critical intersection points.
Can I just add on that?
Yes, sir.
As well? Thank you very much, Katie. I just wanted to add in the fact, if we all remember a few Fridays back where there was that accident with the trolley in the car, Rep. Driscoll and I, in talking with the town and other folks, we authored a letter at that time to the MBTA, basically asking the MBTA to serve as the middle person between the town and the city of Boston on figuring out a way, even if it's mandated by the law that a car is supposed to yield to the trolley tracks. That's established, but in today's world of distracted driving and people thinking that they know better and can beat a vehicle and you name it, regardless of what happened on that night, there can be some pieces of education and awareness, whether it's through painting, whether it's through signage and whatnot, that conversation can happen. What we decided to do in sending that over to the T was ask them to bring Milton and Boston together, so we don't have on one side one set of signs and painting on Milton, and all of a sudden something completely different that looks awful going the other way, but so that there's some uniformity to it. And again, even if it doesn't change the law, whatever we can do to make people more aware that they should slow down and pay attention and yield at a trolley tracks, I think is incredibly important. And so we sent that over to the GM and to the T, and I know that they're going to be working on it going forward, because I remember that Friday night when it happened and trying to figure out what was going on. I think you bring up that hugely important point about that safety at that crossing and other places as well.
Next question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for putting this on. This has been very educational. I had a couple of questions. One, I guess I'll start with the number or the number of passengers. How do you record that? A number of people have told me that it seems light, and I know that there certainly isn't a way to record it by the number of people that pay, because you can't get on and off a trolley and all go by the driver. I mean, it's not practical. And to follow up on that, if you were to switch to another vehicle, how are you going to handle the payment? Because during rush hour, getting on and off the trolley is awfully difficult, and it just seems to me there should be a better way. And have you thought of any other methods to handle that?
So certainly, we take random days, and we use central planning perform studies on the counts, and honestly, I think many of our ridership projections, are obviously they've got variation to them, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that our 6,600 passengers per day number is light, but we're hoping that there will be more, and we're planning for more, and that's why we're looking at higher capacity vehicles to be able to provide both higher capacity for each singular trip, but then also possibly providing more vehicles to provide more trips and decrease our headways. But with that comes some of the signal improvements that we'll need to make in order to make it safe for those trains to travel closer together. From a fare collection point of view, we are embarking in a program that I encourage everybody to research on our website and to look at some of the information we have on our website about our AFC 2.0 process. It's a program where we're rolling out a new form of payment for riding our system that is going to have much more flexibility for riding our system, and it's really designed around some of these challenging type of payment and frankly fare collection of fares across the network that have very controlled environments in our downtown core, but then looser controls on our street operations like the Green Line surface and the Mattapan trolley and frankly our commuter rail. So we have a more universal approach to providing those forms of access to our system. That is going to be rolling out in the next. It's in the planning process now. We have a vendor that is signed up for the new fare payment technology that will make that a lot easier. It'll be much more validator based, meaning all the doors will open and everyone will get on, and it will be the expectation for riders to tap their Charlie card or their cashless payment technology, whether it's through their Apple Watch or their cell phone or whatever means that they feel comfortable paying through, and then there will be random checks for the patrons to prove that they've paid their fare.
Thank you. And just one comment. I realize that a lot of people are in love with the PCC cars, and I think they're quaint and they are kind of cool looking, but they're not really so cool to ride. I honestly, if you had one day a week that they were running, everybody would be happy to see that they're still running, but they're museum pieces. And it seems to me that if the Green Line can get these, there's no reason that the rest of us. I mean, I think the ridership would jump considerably if it were a more reliable and comfortable ride. But it just speaks to the rest of the system. And this is your introduction from let's say Milton and Dorchester, Lower Mills, Mattapan, Hyde Park. Your first introduction to the MBTA is with a 70-year-old vehicle. Your confidence is dropped just before you even take step on the train. So it just seems that this is your opportunity to make a good step in the right direction, and I would encourage you to do more than just take LRV 9s 10 years from now, 8 years from now, but see what you can do sooner than that. And I know it's probably impossible, but you really need to make sure that you've proven to everybody here and throughout the district that this is something that's absolutely impossible before you take that step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of him, but in terms of underscoring, a lot of feedback we hear and certainly experiencing the ride on the PCC car being packed in. If you could talk again about the capacity of ability of the Type 9 versus the current PCC car, because I think that is something as people look at the options is really important to consider.
Yeah, thank you. So it is, it's more than double the capacity to ride a Type 9 vehicle than it is to ride a PCC vehicle. I don't have the exact count on the number of riders that we can fit, but Vince, do you happen to know off the top of your head what the capacity of the Type 9 vehicle is?
I don't.
I want to say it's...
When we went and saw them, they said it was about 3 times the size.
Yeah, okay.
And so, to the gentleman's point about paying and being able to swipe the cards, I feel like half the time when people are packed in there like sardines, you can't make it to the front to pay, even if you would want to. So with this new vehicle allowing people to actually be able to move around, sit down, and be spaced out, I think you are, to your point, going to see that payment jump.
Yeah, I want to say that the capacity, and we'll get the number exactly, but it's somewhere in the 130 passenger range that the Green Line Type 9 can carry. And with the types of doors that we're talking about with level boarding, I can't underscore enough. When you're dealing with level boarding, the amount of time it takes you to get on and off the train will be dramatically improved. The doors are wider. They're each leaf of the door, I think, is 32 inches wide. So when both of those doors open, you're talking about greater than 5 feet worth of open door space to board and alight the vehicle. It'll be a much easier operating experience to get on and get off of the train, and the amount of time that the train needs to sit at each station to allow the boarding to happen and allow the alighting to happen. All of those little pieces of incremental improvement make for a much faster trip. And so these are all the kinds of things that we're considering as part of these different alternative evaluations. Yes, sir.
First, I just want to thank you for your commitment to keeping it light rail. I was really happy to see the numbers come through to back up what I think a lot of us all had in our guts is that was the right option to do. So I'm glad the numbers kind of showed in that direction. So 2 lines of question, one around the type of vehicle and then one about a very specific stop. In terms of vehicles, I'd prefer brand new modern vehicles as opposed to 10-year-old Green Line hand-me-downs. With that said, I understand the practicality that you're going for. You have brand new Green Lines today. In 10 years, you'll have 10-year-old Green Lines, and if you go forward with the Type 10s, the Type 10s won't be backward compatible. Essentially, the replacements going forward for the Green Lines, they want to be one of the challenges of the Green Lines today is you have these the specs that you design a Green Line on today has to backwards integrate with a 1986 Type 7. And so when you go forward with the Type 10s, I'm boring the people to death here, but
it's great seeing you've done your research.
When you go forward with the Type 10s, you want to be able to mothball all the 9s, all the 8s, all the 7s go away. The 7s and 8s you can shoot because they're past their useful life, but the 9s, they're only 10 years old. You got to do something with them. So we're the natural place to put them. So the challenge becomes, in 2 years, if the Type 10 funding goes by the wayside and you can't get the Type 10s, what happens to us? Do we no longer get our Type 9s?
It's a great question. I honestly, I don't have an answer for you right now, other than we've made a commitment to invest in the Mattapan high-speed line and to modernize that Mattapan high-speed line. Okay. And we can't do that unless we provide an accessible vehicle for this service. Today, right now, that's the best answer I can give you. I do have lots of pressure, though, to make sure that happens.
And I have to ask the question for all my friends who along Elliott Street who board at Valley Road every day. Valley Road is for those who don't know, is the second fewest boardings of any rail stop in the entire system. Your trivia question is what is number one? That's back at the hill on the E line. So we're number 2, or I guess second lightest. So the challenge is there's not a lot of space there, and I can't imagine there is a huge desire to buy property and put in a multi-million-dollar elevator for the low number of riders at that stop every day. I just want to make sure that stop's going to stay. Like I understand. I understand. You need to do some things to make it accessible. I just want to make sure if you can't make it fully accessible, that you don't suddenly say, "Oh, well, sorry, we got to shut down the station. We can't have a station."
So we don't have a solution for that yet. It is a very involved process to eliminate a station. Currently, right now, I can tell you it's not our intent to eliminate the station. But we will need to make it fully accessible. So you've accurately articulated the challenge that we have in front of us as part of that specific piece of the modernization of the Mattapan high-speed line. Another reason why it will take some significant engineering and design effort to get us to a place where we can enact those improvements. But Valley Road is a location that currently today we have every intent of making fully accessible and continuing to provide service there. I think we would find that if it were an accessible station, we think there would be greater ridership there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing and all the efforts of our elected officials to support this project. Obviously, it's critical to Milton and the surrounding communities. I also wanted to reiterate Mr. Keeley's point about the 6,600 trips per day. I don't think that I get counted when I get on because nobody checks my fare because I go straight through all the way Mattapan to Ashmont and back. So I think that the community is being underrepresented by those counts, and I don't know that your survey data covers that or not, but I'd like to make sure that everyone's counted. And also to Ms. Conlon's point about the crossing at Central Ave, as a representative of the Neponset River Greenway Council, I'd really like to see that crossing improved as soon as possible because, as you know, the trolleys keep getting in collisions there with impatient drivers, and there's thousands, literally, of pedestrians at that crossing every day, and it's just as important for their safety, if not more so. I've got a question on the low floor boarding. Does that mean that the platforms will be changed, and how does that affect the pedestrian crossings at the different stations?
So the low floor will be, or the platforms will be elevated to provide that level boarding. And when it comes to grade crossings, we would put in something akin to an inverted or like almost like a wheelchair ramp at a sidewalk crossing at a street. We would build some feature like that into the at-grade crossings for pedestrians at our stations. We may need to rethink where we have those at-grade crossings at our stations to be closer to the leading end or the trailing end, depending on your perspective of the platforms where they're located, so that it's a little bit more of a natural location for some of those ramps down and grade crossings for pedestrians. But I don't think that's an insurmountable challenge.
Okay, thank you. As we're going along the trail, you can see that the retaining walls, I think they're 90 years old or something like that. And a lot of places are crumbling, the concrete's falling down. I've had to report the chain link fence keeps falling over as the concrete comes apart. I'm assuming that this will be covered by the Phase 2 maintenance?
Yes.
Okay, and other things, what else will they be, like new bridges?
So perhaps new bridges, not likely too many new bridges. Again, it depends on where we end up with the Type 9 vehicles. If it is the Type 9 vehicles, I'm fairly confident that the existing bridges with some targeted maintenance and structural strengthening in a couple of targeted locations, we won't need to go through the dramatic effort of replacing them. But that said, we still need to go through the engineering design to prove out that hypothesis. If we can't prove that out, then those bridges will need to be replaced.
Okay, that sounds like a big deal. I hope that's not necessary. And the last question I have for you is, I know that a lot of the people who have biked to Mattapan Square to take the train have given up doing that because their bikes typically get stolen. I'd like to see a bike storage cage, something like at Ashmont and other terminal stations, installed at Mattapan Station so that more people can basically extend the walk shed by allowing more people to bike there. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank
I
you.
appreciate all your work.
I would like to second Lee's last point for there to be a bike cage in that area of Mattapan. But I came up here to thank you for this great presentation, as well as the very thoughtful questions by the members of the community, which gave us even more detail. This is just perhaps an end of the evening comment, but when I first moved to Milton and began taking the high-speed Mattapan trolley, I wondered, high speed? Okay. And I'm just curious, for 10 years from now, if one were to take the trolley from Mattapan to Ashmont, what do you project how long that would take?
I do not know right now. We still have to perform that level of engineering to be able to provide that answer. But I do commit that I will be able to give you that answer as we go through this design process.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take on average now? In my head, it always seems to be longer on hot days than on others.
I believe it's a 6-minute trip.
I think it's a little longer than that.
What's that?
Yeah.
12. Sorry. I'm sorry. 6-minute headways, 12-minute trip.
Okay.
Sorry
Thank
about
you
that.
very much.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have additional questions?
I was just going to add one quick thing. The limiting factor as far as speed tends to be more related to the distance between the stations. So in keeping the stations, there will likely not be, there could possibly not be significant changes to the speed. But I do love the high-speed reference. When the line was built, I think it was back in the 1920s. So at the time, it was very high speed.
My name is Anna Drennan. I'm a proud resident of Central Avenue. And I just would like to end the evening with a little fun trivia. Cedar Grove Cemetery is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the only cemetery in the world with a trolley going through it. I don't know, people know that, but just thought I'd add that to the evening. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I've lived on that street for some time. I had a little job at Osco Drug at the end of the street there. It's now Rite Aid, but you know, I'm familiar with the Central Avenue station. Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any last questions or comments from the audience? If not, I want to allow Senator Timilty a brief moment to say a few words. He arrived, well, now probably 30, 40 minutes ago. But Senator, would like to address the audience.
Thank you very much, Rick. And I must say I'm in the unenviable task of following Anna's trivia questions. But on a very serious note, thank you to the MBTA for what you're doing, and of course my colleagues in government, Rep. Cullinane, Rep. Driscoll, and our select board. This is a collaboration, and I thank you all for the collaboration. I grew up on Thatcher Street, so right over there. When I was about 5 years old, I used to spend a lot of time on Columbine Road because my caregivers then, when my parents were away, that's where I would stay, and they would take me to the Valley Road Station to take the trolley to Ashmont. When I was in high school, I'd take the trolley to Ashmont to go to the Red Sox with friends. When I was in law school, I would take the trolley to Ashmont to go into downtown Boston to go to New England School of Law at the time. So, long story short, I'm keenly aware that this line is an economic and cultural lifeline for Mattapan and Dorchester. It's very important to all of us. And meetings like this, first of all, I thank you all for being here, because meetings such as these make us all better at what we do. When I say us, I mean your reps, myself, your select board, forgive me, I almost said, back to the old days when my father was on the board. But this makes us all better at what we do, and none of us will forget that we work for you folks. So we're all committed going forward to work with the MBTA, and again, thank you very much, to make sure that this economic and cultural lifeline for Milton and Mattapan and Dorchester is A+. So thank you all very much, and to my colleagues in government, thank you. Look forward to a lot of productive work with the MBTA, and thank you all. Good night.
Well, with that, I'd like to echo the Senator's comments and thank you all for coming out on behalf of the MBTA. Please remember, the public comment period will continue for about another month. Many ways to comment. That's probably the easiest and most accessible. We have one more meeting on Thursday of this week in Dorchester, and feel free to come by. We'd love your comments, and keep them coming. Thank you very much.
Rick, if I might, Eric, can I post these on the town's website after Thursday night's presentation?
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
so after Thursday night's presentation, this deck of slides will be available on the Milton's town website. Also want to acknowledge Select Board Member Zulis, who came in a little late, and thank everyone again for their comments, and thank this group for their presentation. Thank you.